The alarm on Deck 7 was still screaming when Commander Kyle Hartman reached the bridge. The ship's central intelligence had flagged an unauthorized boarding event, and by the time Kyle pulled up the feed on his console, there she was, standing in the middle of the cargo hold like she had been there the whole time. She was not human. That much was obvious before he even studied the details. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with pale silver-blue skin that caught the ship's fluorescent lighting and scattered it like a... Her eyes were solid black from edge to edge, no white visible anywhere. Her fingers were too long. Her joints bent at angles that made the crew behind Kyle shift uncomfortably. She wore no suit, no helmet, nothing that indicated she had traveled through the vacuum of space to get here. And yet here she was. The translation system on the Meridian-class cargo hauler the Galatia's run was not built for. Kyle keyed it on anyway. You are on a human vessel, he said. Identify yourself. She looked directly at the camera. Those black eyes found the lens like she knew exactly where it was. I am Sarah, she said. The translator lagged 3 seconds behind her actual sound. Her real voice was a layered thing, like two people speaking in unison at slightly different frequencies. I am a Zephyrian cognitive specialist. I do not wish conflict. I am requesting diplomatic temporary asylum under the Galen Accords. Article 9. Kyle looked at his second officer, Dana Ruiz, who was already pulling up the Galen Accords on her tablet. Article 9 covered sentient beings in documented distress. They had signed the Accords. The entire United Earth Fleet had signed the Accords 4 years ago. Lower your weapons, Kyle said to the security team in the hold, who had 15 years in fleet security and the kind of expression that never changed regardless of circumstances, did not lower his weapon. Sir, Pete said through the comm. She walked through our hull. We watched it on camera. She walked through 6 inches of reinforced plating like it was a curtain. I am aware, Kyle, of that, and you want me to stand down. I want you to not start a war with a species we have barely met. A long pause. Then Pete lowered his rifle. Kyle took the lift down to the hold himself. He did not bring backup. He told Dana to log the encounter in real time and keep a direct feed to Earth Relay Station 7. If this went badly, someone would know what happened and why. When the lift doors opened, Sarah turned to face him immediately. Up close, she was even more unsettling. Not because she looked threatening, because she looked like she was reading him. Her head tilted slightly. Those black eyes moved across his face in a way that felt methodical, like a doctor reviewing a scan. Commander Hartman, she said, before he had introduced himself. Your crew is frightened. The man by the left door has elevated pulse and attention response in his jaw. The woman near the crates is calculating exit distances. The older male near the panel behind you is holding very still, which in humans typically signals either calm or readiness for confrontation. Kyle let none of that show on his face. How do you know my name? I read it from your crew. The moment they saw your face on the internal feed, several of them thought your name clearly. Human minds broadcast thought very legibly when emotion is involved. You can read minds. Cognitive pattern interpretation, she said, with the careful correction of someone who had made this distinction many times. I do not hear words. I read the structural shape of thought. In Zephyrian terms, what you call a mind is more like a weather system. Turbulence. Kyle looked at her for a moment. What am I thinking right now? The head tilt again. She studied him for 4 full seconds. I do not know, she said. The cargo hold was silent enough that Kyle could hear the ship's ventilation cycling. You cannot read me, he said, and for the first time since she had appeared on his ship, something shifted in her expression. More like the specific unease of encountering something that does not fit inside a system you have trusted your entire life. Your mind is the first human mind I have encountered that I cannot read at all. It is not static. It is not blocked. It is simply not readable. I do not know what you are thinking. I do not know what you are feeling. I do not know what you intend to do next. Is that a problem? Kyle said. She looked at him with those unreadable black eyes. For me, she said carefully, it is deeply disorienting. I suspect it is an extraordinary advantage. Kyle thought about that for exactly 1 second. Then he said, Follow me. I will show you to temporary quarters. You will not walk through any more walls. You will answer questions when asked, and you will stay away from my crew's heads. She fell into step beside him without argument. He noticed she matched his pace exactly. Not the pace of someone who had measured his stride. The pace of someone paying very close attention to a thing they could not predict. She had no idea what he was going to do next. But for the first time in a very long time, that felt like the right answer. The Galatia's run held a crew of 41 people. By the time Kyle reached the upper corridor with Sarah walking 3 steps behind him, he could feel the shift in the air. Every person they passed went quiet the moment they saw her, and then stayed quiet a beat longer than silence required. Pete had radioed ahead. Kyle did not slow down. He kept his stride even and his eyes forward. If he looked uncertain, they would feel it. 41 people on a long-haul vessel learned to read their commander's body language the way civilians read weather forecasts. The specific muscular control you are using in your shoulders and jaw is deliberate. Observation noted, Kyle said. 3 crew members you have passed have already regulated their own stress responses in reaction. You function as an emotional anchor for this group. Still not allowed in their heads, Kyle. I cannot help what I perceive, she said. It would be like asking you not to notice color. He stopped in front of a storage cabin that had been empty since their last loadout. He opened it manually, checked the interior. It was small but functional. A cot, a water supply port, a ventilation grate. This works for you? He asked. She stepped inside and looked around. I do not require sleep in the human sense, but the space is sufficient for rest. What do you require? She turned to face him. To not be returned to Zephyrian space. Why? The question landed between them, and she did not. She stood very still, and for just a moment. Her expression did what expressions do when the person behind them is deciding how much truth to. Because, she said finally, I told the High Council something they did not want to hear. And on my world, cognitive specialists who produce unwelcome findings do not simply lose their positions. Kyle held the door frame. What did you tell them? That the human species, she said, is not what we classified you as. What did you classify us as? Grade 3 emergent. Low long-term concern. And what do you think now? She looked at him with the focused attention of someone who had spent their career reading every living thing they encountered, and was now standing in front of the one thing that would not open. I think, she said, that your species produces cognitive patterns I have never encountered in any other species. Simultaneously capable of extraordinary compassion and extraordinary destruction, sometimes in the same moment, sometimes in the same individual. The Zephyrian threat assessment model has no category for what humans actually are. What did you tell them to do about that? I told them to open dialogue, rather than containment protocol. Kyle let that sentence sit where it landed. And they did not agree, he said. They removed me from my post and scheduled a memory correction procedure, she said, with the same tone a person might use to say they had been asked to hand in a badge. The tone of someone who had been saying the terrifying thing calmly because there was no other. Kyle had read about that. What the Zephyrians called correction, Earth xenobiologists called targeted cognitive erasure. They had done it to 3 of their own diplomats after failed trade negotiations. The diplomats had come back with no record of the negotiations in their minds at all. How did you get out? He said. I am a cognitive specialist, Sarah said. I have spent my career reading minds. I knew what the council intended before the session ended. I left before the procedure could be scheduled. And you came to us? I came to the one place. The council would have to negotiate diplomatically to retrieve me from. She paused. I did not anticipate that the first human I encountered would be unreadable to me. That was not part of my calculation. Does it change your calculation? She considered that. The head tilt again. Those black eyes doing whatever they did when she was working something through. I do not yet know how. Kyle stepped back from the doorway. Like, you will stay in this cabin when not summoned. You will eat what the system can provide. You will not enter any crew space without escort. And tomorrow morning, you and I are going to sit down. And you are going to tell me everything you know about Zephyrian containment protocol as it relates to Earth. Agreed, she said. And Sarah, she had already turned away. If you read any of my crew without permission again, Kyle said, I will return you to the nearest Zephyrian way station and let the diplomats sort it out. I do not care about the Galen Accords enough to let my people feel violated on their own ship. Are we clear? She held very still. Clear. He pulled the cabin door shut and stood in the corridor for a moment. Behind him, Dana's voice came through the comm. Earth Relay has responded. They want a full briefing in 2 hours. Tell them 1 hour, Kyle said. Pull everything we have on Zephyrian containment history. Everything. Already started, Dana said. Kyle walked down the corridor, and for the first time in the 8 years he had commanded a vessel, he was glad his mind was not something anyone could read. Because what he was thinking right now was something he needed to keep entirely to himself. The briefing with Earth Relay did not go the way Kyle expected, which meant it went exactly the way he should have expected Earth Command to handle anything new and complicated, with 10 people talking at once, none of them agreeing, and a general at the far end of the screen who had clearly been pulled out of bed and was not, hiding his feelings about it. General Conrad Webb, Field Command, Earth Defense Sector 4. Kyle had met him twice. Both times, Webb had treated every situation like a nail and every piece of authority he held like. "You let her aboard voluntarily," Webb said. "The Galen Accords do not give me the option to refuse asylum request from a documented sentient in distress," Kyle said. "She walked through your hull." "She did. Without a suit." "Yes, sir." Webb looked at the person to his left, who Kyle did not recognize, then back at the screen. "And she reads minds. She reads cognitive patterns. She describes it as similar to reading weather." "She reads minds," Webb repeated, as if Kyle's clarification was an attempt at decoration. "And she cannot read yours." "Correct." Something shifted in the general's posture, not visible to most people. Kyle had spent his career watching people, and he caught it. "Keep her contained," Webb said. "Do not let her near communications equipment, navigation, or any crew member without your direct supervision. We are dispatching the crawler to your position. 31 hours. "What is the crawler bringing?" "A team from the Cognitive Research Division." Webb paused exactly 1 beat. "Do not let her know they are coming." Kyle kept his voice level. "Understood." The screen went dark. Dana was standing behind him. She did not say anything immediately, which was one of the things Kyle valued most about Dana Ruiz. She waited until the room was finished being whatever it needed to be. "Cognitive Research Division," she said finally. "Yes. That's the group that spent 3 years trying to figure out how the Velhari communicated." "Telepathically?" "Yes." "They did not figure it out," Dana said. "They did not." Kyle stood up from the console and looked out the forward viewport at the Galatia's run was moving at standard cargo cruise speed, which meant they had 31 hours before the crawler arrived, and he needed to decide something before then. He went back to Sarah's cabin. She was not sitting. She was standing near the ventilation grate, very still, with her eyes closed. When he knocked and entered, she opened them immediately. "You have spoken with your command," she said. "Yes. They are sending someone." Kyle did not react. "What makes you say that?" "The cognitive pattern of a person who has received instructions they intend to follow but are not comfortable with," she said. "Even from you, I can read the shape of posture, the weight of decision. I cannot read your thoughts. I can read your body. That is different from mind reading. Yes, it is what any attentive person can do. I simply do it more precisely." Kyle sat down on the edge of the cot. "I am going to ask you something, and I want a direct answer." "Yes." "What does Zephyrian containment protocol actually involve? Not the diplomatic language. The reality." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down across from him, which he had not expected. She folded those 2 long fingers together and looked at the floor between them. "When the Council identifies a species as a long-term threat vector," she said, "containment does not mean cages or barriers. It means influence management, subtle interference with communication infrastructure, introduction of specific misinformation into scientific and political discourse, prolonged isolation of key individuals who demonstrate unexpected cognitive traits." Kyle waited. "Individuals like you," she said. "Humans who cannot be read are, in the Council's assessment, the most unpredictable variable in the Earth equation. My report identified a statistical cluster of such individuals. Approximately 1 in 800,000 humans produces the kind of cognitive noise pattern that resists Zephyrian reading. The Council wants to identify that cluster. And then remove it from the equation. Zephyrians do not use violence as a first instrument. But quietly, over time, those individuals would find their careers rerouted, their opportunities narrowed." Kyle looked at his hands for a moment. "And you told them not to do this." "I told them it was unnecessary and strategically disastrous, that humans are not a threat to be managed, that the unreadable cluster is not a danger. It is simply a variation." She paused. "They disagreed with my assessment. So they were going to erase it from your memory." "Yes." Kyle stood up. "The Team Earth is sending. They are going to want to study you." "I know. I do not know what their methods are." Sarah looked up at him. "I do." Kyle held that thought. "Are you afraid?" "I am," she said, and the word came out of her in a way that suggested she did not say it often, just placed there, honest and bare. "Then we have 30 hours to figure out a better option," Kyle said. "You intend to help me." "I have not decided yet," Kyle said, "but I intend to understand the full situation before I make any decision. That is all I am promising you right now." He walked to the door. "The 1 in 800,000. The humans who cannot be read." "Yes. Is that trait inherited?" She looked at him carefully. "We do not know. The data set was too small. You are the only unreadable human I have personally encountered." Kyle nodded once and left in the corridor, walking back toward the bridge. He let himself think the thing he had not let himself think in front of her. His daughter was 8 years old. She was on Earth with her mother, going to school and building things out of scrap electronics and reading books that were too old for her because she liked the way complicated sentences felt in her mouth. He had no way of knowing if she was 1 in 800,000. He had no way of knowing if she was already on a list. Kyle reached the bridge and pulled up the crawler's trajectory on his console. He began to plan. Donna Ruiz was not the kind of person who asked questions she already knew the answer to, so when she found Kyle in the navigation bay at 4 in the morning, running calculations on a detour route that would add 9 hours to their journey, she stood behind him for a full minute without speaking. Then she said, "That route takes us through the Helion corridor." "Yes. There is no cargo. Justification for the Helion corridor. It is completely out of our lane." "Yes. The crawler will still intercept us." 30 minutes later than scheduled, Kyle said, which gives us 30 extra minutes to complete whatever conversation we need to complete. Dana pulled a chair and sat beside him. "You are going to warn her." "I am going to give her accurate information about what she can expect when the crawler arrives. That is not warning. That is basic decency." "Webb told you not to." "Webb told me not to let her know they were. I am making a navigational adjustment for unspecified technical reasons, and she may draw her own conclusions from the ship's new route if she chooses to access the public navigation log, which any passenger on this vessel is permitted to do under the Galen. Accords?" Dana was quiet for a moment. "You are using a rule to get around a rule." "I am following both rules simultaneously." "Kyle, that is not the same thing." Dana looked at the route on the screen. Then she looked at Kyle. "She told you something that changed your calculation?" "Yes." "Are you going to tell me what it was?" Kyle thought about his daughter building things out of scrap electronics. "But I will." Dana nodded once. She understood not yet. It was different from Number. By 6 in the morning, Sarah had indeed accessed the public navigation log. Kyle knew because the system flagged any non-crew access. He did not go to her cabin. At 8 in the morning, there was a knock on the door of the navigation bay. He opened it himself. Sarah stood in the corridor, and for the first time since she had materialized in his cargo hold, a specific kind of uncertain that Kyle recognized as the expression of an extremely competent person encountering a situation their competence does not cover. "The route change," she said. "Mechanical precaution," Kyle said. "The Helion corridor has a stability lane we like to use when our port side alignment is running." "Warm." She looked at him. He looked at her. "Your port side alignment," she said, "was perfectly calibrated in the diagnostic report I accessed an hour ago." "Diagnostics can miss?" She was reading his posture, his body, everything she could reach. He gave her nothing. Finally, she said quietly, "Why? Why what? Why help me? You do not know me. You have no obligation to me beyond the minimum required by treaty law. Your command has given you instructions. Why?" Kyle considered how much truth to give her and settled on all of it. "Because you came here instead of running somewhere else," he said. "Because you lost your career and your memory to tell the truth about us. Because the thing they want to erase from you is the thing that might be the only honest record of what humans actually are." He paused. "And because I have a daughter." Sarah went very still. "And I do not know," Kyle continued, "if she is on a list. But if she is, I would want there to be someone, somewhere, who did not simply follow instructions when it mattered." Sarah stood in the doorway and said, "Nothing for a long time." "I still cannot read you," she said finally. "I know. It is the strangest thing I have ever experienced. Every other mind I have encountered since I was 6 years old has been legible. Yours is a closed room." "Does it bother you?" she considered. "But it does not." "It is?" She paused, reaching for the right word in a language she was navigating through a translator. "Restful," she said finally. "Being near a mind I cannot read is restful. I did not know until now that I was exhausted." Kyle stepped back from the doorway. Get some more rest, whatever you can manage. The next 18 hours are going to require you to think clearly." "And you?" she said. "You will also rest." "I will try." She turned back toward her cabin. "Commander Hartman." "Kyle," he said.